We are live.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Well, firstly, thank you so much, Mr. Gurnani, for joining us today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to move on to our next speaker, wherein we are talking about changing crisis to opportunity, the top technology trends in 2020 and beyond. Technology trends that significant impact, significant disruptive potential, and those which set the stage for innovation over the next 5 years. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're elated and honored to be joined by Padma Shri Saurabh Srivastava, former chairman, NASSCOM, IVCA, Thai, co-founder, IAN, who's taken out his valuable time and joined us today. Thank you so much, Mr. Srivastava, for joining us and giving us your valuable time. Also, to all our audience members, if you do have any questions directed to Mr. Srivastava, do type it in your Q&A tab. Over to you, Mr. Srivastava. Thank you for giving us your time today.
Well, firstly, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Entrepreneur India, for inviting me for this talk. I think this is an extremely relevant subject for today because I cannot think of any event that has been more disruptive in living memory. Maybe the world wars, but it's not even in my living memory. So I doubt any of you have kind of seen what happened in the world wars. But the difference in this is that two things have happened. In world wars, some parts of the world were affected, some were not, and you could always help. So those who were not impacted could help those who were. Here, everybody is impacted, and over a much longer time. So this disruption will cause us in many ways to reimagine how we live. So if you just think of yourself, let me think of myself. So I have a home in the mountains, and for the last 10 years, I've been able to go there about 4 times a year. I struggle to stay there for like 3 days, rush back, I have to do things. And now I've been in my home for 9 months. I have not moved out of this house. And I am productive. I'm doing everything. I'm talking to you guys. So guess what will change in my lifestyle? As soon as it's warm enough in the mountains, I'm going to be there for 6 months. I'm going to operate from there. Now think of what it does to what I do with my time, with where I go, what I buy, how I live. Is going to happen to everybody. So by the time things quote unquote get back to, as they say, normal, it'll be a few years. In those years, all of us would have changed in many ways. You will not have the same level of travel. Many things will change. Our thoughts have changed. So the first thing I would say is when there is disruption, the best opportunity for entrepreneurs, for startups. Disruption hits very hard those that are established. The airlines have been destroyed. Hotels have a problem. Lots of industries are going to get over. And others will have to reinvent themselves. It's very hard when you have a $20, $30 billion company with hundreds of thousands of employees doing certain things to change. Startups always thrive. Even in this pandemic in India, in the middle of it, we have had 2 or 3 unicorns come up. So I'll come to that in a minute. I think this pandemic is terrible, but for startups, for entrepreneurs, you would never get an opportunity like that in living memory again. So think of what's happened. Businesses that we thought were not viable are doing very well. Education is going digital. The way we buy is going digital. I have a store next door. I stay in an area called Defense Colony in Delhi, and there's a market next door. But actually, I don't send anybody to buy it. I just order. So suddenly, because of that, I discover that there is a startup that's providing organically grown fresh salad. And when they send me the salad, they send it with living roots. So I have the salad, I plant those roots in pots. So am I ever going to buy salad in the market again? Unlikely. So I'm giving you very, very small examples. Let me give you another one. What has happened in healthcare? Hospital beds are limited. Hospitals are the worst place to get an infection. So what is happening today? People are treating themselves at home. Many hospitals have completely been converted to COVID hospitals. So what's happening? You think people are not falling ill in the normal way they did? Of course they are. But what's happening today is they're treating themselves at home. Hospitals, because they don't have beds available, are reaching out to all of us and saying, hey, we can treat you over the net. You schedule calls, we'll do video calls, we'll tell you what to do, we'll send you stuff that has to be done. Okay. And so healthcare is changing. One of the predictions is that over the next 5 years or so, maybe earlier, maybe longer, 80% of hospital beds will be ICU beds. Complete reversal of what you have today. So people won't go to a hospital unless they really need intensive care. Guess what that does? It now creates a huge market for startups that are going to provide care at home. You can provide oxygen at home. You can set up quote unquote semi-isolated areas. You can have distance treatment, everything. So there are startups already doing that. This will become a whole big trend. Hospitals will do this. And what will happen to the ICUs? People, the doctors will operate remotely. So they'll sit in their homes, they'll have a laptop, they'll be connected, they will monitor what's happening to patients in real time. And basically, nurses will be handling it. Now, if that's going to happen, what does it do? There's a big market for robotics because doctors are not operating. Maybe nurses will have problem going in some places. AI will come in. A lot of different types of products will come in for healthcare, medical devices. Just stay with those nurses. They're going to have to talk to patients. So you're going to need translations. So the companies that are currently doing it will translate what people are saying, and then in a different language, the nurses may come from a different area. So small little things will change the way that we're doing it. And I will talk to you of, I'll come back to this in a way to give you some sense of what's happening. But let me just pick up how this will all happen. How this will happen is technology. So far, we've had, to my mind, more technology than we've ever used properly. So we will begin to use the technology we have. And there are some new technologies that will come into their own in the next 5 years. So let me just, there are lots of different people, lots of different publications who have different ideas of what are the top 10, 20, 50 technologies. Let me just pick up the ones that, to my mind, are going to be key, and the ones that I'm seeing startups going into and for which there is a demand. So the underpinning, the number one trend, the number one technology, okay, is going to be. So the underpinning for this, apologies for that. I got up late, so I'm still in the middle of my breakfast. So please don't mind. So the underpinning is going to be artificial intelligence, machine learning. The increasing ability of machines to learn and act intelligently will absolutely transform our world. And this will actually be also the main driving force behind many of the other trends that I will talk about. I mean, think of it like this. You are what you are today because you've lived, you've had many experiences, you've learned, and all of that has gone into your brain, and you're the end product of all that. We're increasingly being able to do that with machines and much faster. It is at the center of almost everything we do. IoT is another very fundamental technology because it'll lead to a lot of smart devices and objects connected to the internet, and they'll constantly be gathering and transmitting data, and they will fuel AI and big data. So big data, augmented analytics is the other big trend that will impact us. The whole area of data sciences. So our ability to make sense and work with enormously complex and varied streams of data. Now wearables, you've already seen it. They are going to go to a different level. So there's a startup I'm looking at right now, came out of MIT, and people who cannot talk, for instance, it is now going to be able to take their brain impulses and create actions and speech out of that. So these wearables will move towards almost augmented humans in some point. You of course have blockchain, because blockchain will be very transformational. We haven't seen enough use of that yet. That will begin to happen. Okay. Natural language processing was always something around for the last several years, maybe a decade. But now it's at a point where it really has come to its own because of the other technological development that have happened. So interaction with machines is going to completely change. I talked about robotics. So robots and cobots, that's going to happen. Robots are getting intelligent with AI ML as I talked about it. And you'll kind of have robots collaborating with humans, and that's the term cobot that has been coined and is being talked about. Autonomous vehicles for sure. Now in India, we'll see them later, but this is going to be a massive trend. I think in the next 5 years, we may see less of it in India, but in other parts of the world, absolutely. We've already seen a lot in genomics. This is going to move to another level. So, for example, you may be able to correct a DNA mutation that leads to cancer. It's going to have a huge impact on healthcare. AR and VR, there's a lot happening on it, but it will move to an entirely different level. Digital platforms, you've already seen Facebook, Uber, Airbnb. In India, we have our own UPI, UID. I mean, just look at how they're transforming what we are able to do. Direct cash benefit transfers, digital transactions. So just think of what digital platforms will do. Drones and UAVs, we have just seen the beginning of it. And it's not about just manufacturing drones. It's about what you can do with them, applications for them. I mean, for instance, you no longer have to have people who have to go to a mine to assess what is likely to be the mining capacity of an area. With drones, AI, with many of these things, you can just send a drone and it'll tell you what's there, how much can you mine, all of that. And I'm not even talking about firefighting, law enforcement, transformation, search and rescue. uh, all of that, and certainly defense. It's quite big. You do have quantum computing. Quantum computing will completely change what we think of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is a big thing today. This trend will only accelerate, but quantum computing will make our current state of the art on cybersecurity really look like something out of the Stone Age. So at the moment, it's really in the labs, it's with Google, it's with IBM, but if we may or may not see it in 5 years, we will certainly see it in this decade. And I would add to that one more, which is the nanotech. Because nanotechnology and material science, the increasing ability to understand materials and control matter on a very tiny scale. I mean, at a simple level, you're seeing bendable displays, but in healthcare and other areas, its impact will actually be will be absolutely phenomenal. So what all does this mean? I want you to think of these not in technology by itself or for itself. Uh, yes, many of you can build some of these fundamental technologies. There's a huge market for that. In technology trends, I would add SaaS, which I forgot. Uh, very, very big. This is how people will consume. But what I would ask you to do is reimagine what the world will be like. Uh, a vaccine isn't going to get into any of you, and to my mind, before 2 years. Now, if it's going to be 3 years of living in a different way, what do you think will happen to the world? What will be important? What will not be important? And that's where you will look at the opportunities. So I talked about healthcare. It'll be the single biggest area for application of AI and machine learning. So already we're looking at startups that are looking at different ways of diagnostics. I mean, just look at the eye today. So today, when you look at the eye, you have people who are specialists on the retina, and the retina specialist will just see your retina. A third will look at your cornea. Somebody else will look at your refraction and cataract. But because that's what they're trained to do. But there's a lot of data in that eye. If we can analyze that data, it could tell you a lot of things about the heart, for instance. It could tell you a million things about different health conditions. So you may not need to have anything which is invasive in terms of testing. People are already doing that. Okay, there's already a company which I funded, which is largely going to be able to do lung repair, uh, artificial corneas, uh, livers, all the rest of it. They're only able to do it because of big data, analytics, and AI. In agriculture, for instance, combining space technologies, combining AI, drones, what people are able to do today already to some extent is you can go to a whole area and map out what's happening there, what's growing, which are the crops, in what condition are they. So, for instance, when states in India compensate farmers if there has been a calamity, guess what? Using these methodologies, there are already startups that are getting into the business of being able to tell the government, hey, this farm was okay, this crop was 50% destroyed. I mean, that data is also used for what you should do in a particular area, what you should grow, what you should not grow. So agriculture, in education, look at what you'll be able to do with education. All of these technologies. Firstly, 5G, I forgot to mention that. Uh, but the ability to go to the remotest areas in India, and already because of COVID, people have started to go to school virtually. So even in the poorer areas, people are using phones, smartphones, others are using tablets. Uh, if you can harness technologies which are now going to also use things like AR, VR. I mean, if you can create an experience which is very much like a classroom, you can actually create uh, a scenario where the entire country can become literate in the remotest areas. They don't have to find a school. I told you I have a home in the mountains. In the mountains, there are kids who have to walk 2 hours one way to go to a school. And they're doing it in the mountains. They're climbing up and they're climbing down. And you look at them and they do it every single day. Think of how much more productive they could be if those 4 hours were not spent doing that. If they went to school once a week, twice a week. So I wanted to give you just some thoughts, some ideas of what I've been seeing, startups that I see, areas that are kind of being already addressed. But I would say one more thing to you. Of course, there's a market for little things. There'll be a big market for intelligent apps. There'll be a trend. I've not mentioned it because I just don't think that's important enough, that's big enough, right? To my mind, if you're going to do a startup, try and solve a big problem. It takes as much effort to solve a big problem as it does to solve a small problem. You might as well, if you're spending a few years of your life in trying to create a startup, it's high risk. Mostly they don't work, and you have to do it again and again. But if you're going to spend your life doing that, do something big, have a big impact. So let me make a plea to you. So if you look at our country, and in fact the whole world, it's 2080. So there's 20% of the world which is people like us. We're middle class or above. We go to school, we have an education. We are positive about our future. We want to go out and do things. We want to solve problems. But guess what? There aren't that many big problems to solve. And if there are, there's a million people trying to do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Could you be the next Facebook or Google or IBM? Do try, because certainly these companies didn't exist. I mean, Infosys or Wipro didn't exist 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So of course you can do it. And Facebook and Google are even more recent. So do try. But on the other hand, if you look at 80% of the population in India and in the world, they have big problems. They have big challenges. And those are difficult problems. Those are not easy. And people are not rushing to solve them. If you can solve them right, in terms of functionality, price point, by leveraging technology, you actually have a very big market. And the single best example is mobile telephony, for instance. Initially, it was confined to the rich. So you remember the first mobile phone I bought was cost me 50,000-60,000 rupees, and a call used to call 14-15 rupees a minute or something like that. I mean, today that has gone down to 5 or 10% of the cost on phones. The phones are now getting to be smartphones. At 4,000, 5,000 bucks, it'll keep going down. And look at telephony; it's virtually free. You have data, right? So I sit on this a Prime Minister's Empowered Committee, which looks, it's chaired by the Cabinet Secretary, which looks at the different schemes that the government has done and give awards to districts that have actually been, okay, that have looked at different, just sorry, yeah. So they look at which districts have actually implemented in the best way what were national priorities. And so there was one district in a place called Banka in Bihar. The district collector worked with IIT Delhi and they built a great solution because kids were not educated. They were doing all the wrong things. So they basically started to deliver those lectures on smartphones. Every cluster would get these. Kids would work. They were geotagged. So they would know when the kids then took exams, which clusters were doing well, which were not doing well, and go back and try and do more coaching. You know what happened? Attendance in school went up from 10-15% to 80-90%. The results went up, the successful of the results went up 3 to 4 times. So in my own place in the hills, it's in the middle of a village. For just 10 lakhs, I've been able to set up a e-health center. So there's a screen, there's the latest medical devices, we can do ECGs, we can do all kinds of tests, and digitally they're communicated to doctors in Delhi, around the world actually, who can then talk to the patient, do a prescription, send it to us, we print it, get the medicines. So suddenly the quality of healthcare or diagnosis that we're providing to these villagers is the same as I would get in Delhi. And the trigger for this is because I was in the hills and my cook told me that he has to go to his home, which is also in the hills, 2 hours away, but that his father's liver's packed up. And I said, how do you know? He said, well, that's what the doctor has said. I said, can you tell your dad to send me what's been prescribed? We said, my dad doesn't have a smartphone. He can't take a picture. He'll have to go to the market. I said, okay, tell him to go to the market and get somebody there to do it. He said, the market is a 1-hour walk and my dad is running 102 fever. So in the end, it took 2 days to get that information and then bring him across, take him to a real doctor. There was no problem with his liver. He just had flu. He'd already spent loads of money. And we are in the same country. You and I are sitting here and we can get this done in hours, in a day. And here it took 2 to 3 days. So is there a market? Are people willing to pay? Yes. Look at the mobile phone companies. We now have more than one phone per person. 80-90% of these phones are not with the rich. My driver has 2 phones. My cook has a phone. The sweeper has a phone. There's nobody who doesn't have a phone. So they got it right in terms of price, functionality, and the market exploded for all these companies. So I would sort of stop here because I think we should allow some time for Q&A if you want it, and say thank you again for inviting me and giving me a chance to talk to you.
Sure. Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Srivastava. Well, we've sort of exceeded on the time, but I'd really request if Mr. Saurabh Kumar, Special Editors Project of Entrepreneur Media India would like to direct 1 or 2 questions. Mr. Kumar, slightly a little on a quicker end because we have to do the awards as well. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bhavna. Mr. Srivastava, we have exceeded the time, but definitely we have a a few questions, and I would want you to take a few of them. So, one question is from Shakti. Shakti wants to know that, startups, like you mentioned, have got boost from COVID, like say healthcare. Do you think they will get affected if COVID goes away, or will it continue to be, that will be the new normal?
So think of how you and I are going to behave. Will health be a big concern?
That's going
Yeah.
to remain so, I think.
Yeah. Am I going to be rushing into hospitals every time I have a problem? Because I now know I don't have to. I can treat myself at home. I can do a video consultation with a doctor. Uh, will I? Everybody today has an oximeter at home. You take your uh, BP. So when you do something for 2 or 3 years, it changes. So what will happen to all of us is we'll begin to reprioritize how we do things. I mean, when you go to a restaurant, will the restaurants be the same? Unlikely. They'll start to be different. When you travel in a plane, it'll be different. So I think, yes, COVID has changed things, but it has changed things in a way that the world, even after the vaccine, will not do things the same way. So you're already seeing that. I mean, if people can learn from home, they'll learn from home. If I can do meetings like this, why will I rush around? And AR and VR will only make this more realistic. So, I mean, we're not at
Right.
where the Star Wars uh, Be Me Down Scotty is, but we're getting there.
Yeah. No, obviously, I would just like to mention that I just saw an interview with Barack Obama and Winfrey Oprah. Both are in two different cities, but it seems like they're sitting in the same room and having the interview. So I'm sure that AR is going to change things going forward. So just one quick question, Mr. Srivastava, that Ujjwal Sharma wants to know that with all we're talking about going digital, everyone, like you said, that meetings can happen this way, healthcare can happen. So do you think startups in the cyber security area is going to be the next big thing?
It already is. So, whoever's coming into cybersecurity is late to the party. But like I said, cybersecurity is going to gather another different dimension. Okay. So, this it'll be the single biggest thing because the more you are digital, that's where all the thieves will be, all the crooks will be. So it is acquiring different dimensions. It's a huge market. Quantum computing will disrupt it. So um, how quickly it comes out of the lab, I don't know. IBM and Google keep saying we already have it. Uh, but I would say yes, it's a great area to focus on.
Okay. So, Mr. Srivastava, we have run out of time. So, I'll just request you to stay for a couple of more minutes and we'll just announce a few awards that we have in this category and then so over to Bhavna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. Well, that was our editor, Special Projects, Entrepreneur India, who just joined us. Mr. Srivastava, firstly, thank you so much for your valuable knowledge. We'd just like to take a few more minutes while we announce the 5 awards we have in this category. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the awards. And first up, we've got our speaker who's just with us, Mr. Srivastava, Padma Shri, Saurabh Srivastava, former chairman, NASSCOM, IVCA, TAI, co-founder Yan, who's right now with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, first up for the best tech for e-commerce, and that goes to Infibeams Avenues Limited. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Infibeams Avenues Limited is adding value, multiplying growth through an integrated digital ecosystem. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, for the second award, which is Tech Company of the Year, and that goes to Reliance Jio. Well, Reliance Jio transforms India with the power of digital revolution to connect everyone and everything everywhere. It's a company which always is at the highest quality and the most affordable price. Congratulations, Reliance Jio, for getting the Tech Company of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, for the third award, which is the best use of innovation, and that goes to Amazon. Well, Amazon is work hard, have fun, and make history. Congratulations, Amazon, for the best use of innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, now for the fourth award, which is the best tech for media. And that goes to Quintype Technologies India Private Limited. Well, Quintype provides the technology platform for digital publishers to create, distribute, and monetize their content across various channels. And ladies and gentlemen, for the final award, which is Best Use of Technology for Social Innovation, and that goes to Solitus Global Education Private Limited. Well, their cutting edge, unique programs are specifically designed to help your child think out of the box and build confidence to face continuously evolving era of robotic automation and machine learning. Your child learns the fine art of an innovative mindset and continuous improvement to dominate the digital era. Well, ladies and gentlemen, joining us live from Solitus Global Education Private Limited is Jelfi Achandi, who will be joining us on the stage and screen. Thank you and congratulations, Jelfi. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Entrepreneur India, for this unique and humongous recognition. Thank you for every parent, child, and all the new friends and all that we've made as part of our groundbreaking journey. Solitus Global was created to address the current education gaps to the needs of the future global economy. Our design celebrates the uniqueness of every child around the globe. Our entrepreneurship program was designed to help build innovative, humane, and global mindset in every child, whether they are collaborating with their global counterparts, preparing for the robotic digital age, like Mr. Saurabh mentioned, or any other uncertain future that today you and I can't even envisage. So, thanks again for the recognition of our work on behalf of our alumni and advisors across the world. It's an honor and it's a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations, Jelfi, once again. So, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to the conclusion of our awards, the set one. I'd first once again like to thank Padma Shri Saurabh Srivastava, our speaker, for joining us and giving up his valuable time. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, as well, for joining us in the Q&A section. Thank you once again, gentlemen.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, join us in the next session while we're viewing our speaker from Facebook. Thank you once again for joining us.